with the drop-down menus, they kind of tell you what everything is. And this little thing is IEE 1574UL certification. You'll put a yes to that because your inverters are all certified in that requirement. And then, yes.
I know we talked about sending electric back to the PPL or whatever. Is there such a thing as a way to store your own electric in case power goes out? You got your own storage?
No.
There is
Not in this system.
No, not in this system. There is in other systems, but not this one here.
What would that be called? A storage tank?
Battery.
Battery.
Yep.
Okay, so DC storage.
There's no AC storage.
Yeah. Just wondering.
Technology has been invented.
And that's what that certification is right there. Is underneath that certification is basically when the power goes out, your inverter is going to shut off and not fry anybody working on the lines. Because that's what, in essence, what that's telling you. And then you want to jump. Do you remember where we left off in the light show?
Yeah. I think you covered all of this except.
It's not. Again, these are the rails. Here's your rails. Once you've established your rails, you want to, whatever end you're working from, if it's right to left or left to right, you want to align those rails, square those rails up so you have one good line, one good end to run from, and then work your panels right to left. And then just let the other end go wild, and when you get to the end of that, just cut off the end and cut the rails off. Nice, clean, fresh Sawzall blade, and cut them off. Splice bars. We talked about splice bars yesterday. This is a splice bar here. Just splices the two rails together. You'll notice there's 4 holes here. They give you 4 screws for them. You could either put all 4 screws in them, so you have one big long rail to mount to the roof. What we normally do is just mount each rail individually, then slide this rail on, or this splice bar on, and then just put 2 screws in one side. Because if you do the long rail and put it up here, once you get everything established, you're supposed to take 2 screws out of here, so to give it a little bit of room for expansion and contraction. Not that those screws are really that sturdy anyway. I think they'd break off if there was any type of stress on them. But take 2 screws out when you're done, so that way it has a little bit of room to move. Yet this splice bar itself is still attached to one, so it's not going to go out of whack and then all of a sudden eventually move and your rails start falling apart. So. Splice bars, your bonding lugs. This is just a bonding jump wire. This is stainless steel. We had it up here. You guys can come up here and take a look. This is just to bond these 2 rails to each other. Here's one of those weaves. And this bolt, the head of this bolt just slides in here. Again, some of this stuff is a little bit of a review, but it slides in here, and then you have one on each end. These weaves bite down into the anodized aluminum and make a good electrical contact. Bonding wire and bonding lugs. Here's the actual bonding lug. Again, we showed you this last night on the video. This slides in. Same idea as the bonding wire. You just crank it in there. And remember, we talked last night also about bonding every other rail, because each rail is bonded through the panels. You bond every other rail, and this gets just number 8 copper wire through it. We suggest you just buy number 6 because by code, if you run number 8 behind the panel, it's fine because it's considered concealed. But if you break out from behind the panel with number 8 wire, it's not technically considered concealed and protected anymore, so you need number 6 wire. So we just suggest you buy just a spool of number 6 copper ground wire. Just looks like this. This is actually 8. We have a little bit left of it, but is an inspector going to catch you on that? Probably not, but again, they tend to have their senses heightened a little bit when they're installing someone's first, or inspecting someone's first installation. Yes?
So from what I understand, the rails themselves and all the components that are attached to it are electrically hot.
Electrically, no, they're bonded together. They're all grounded.
If I touch that, am I going to feel the power?
No.
That's the purpose, is to get
Okay,
it around.
so just
Yeah.
Bonding and grounding are two interchangeable words almost, not technically.
When we talk about bonding, or sometimes I might say the word grounding, we're referring to just everything metal on your roof being one continuous connection. So if everything is continuously connected and run to ground, then if by chance there is a hot wire that touches this, it's not going to electrocute you, it's going to hit this and go to ground and short circuit
So
out.
I'm gonna bring that up like for homes and stuff like that, okay?
Yep. Yes.
Those lug bolts had to be slid in from the side.
Yes.
Do you have to slide everything in before you connect the two rails together, or before you?
It depends. You got to think it through a little bit. You know, you could slide everything through on the rail if you want to start with, and then put your splice bars in. But if you say when it comes time to put your inverters in, which your inverter is mounted with the same 7/16" bolt and nut washers. If you go ahead and put all your rails up and then put all these bond jumpers in, say you have 3 rails wide and you need to put 2 inverters in here, well, if you close it off, you can't slide any more bolts in. So that's why another thing, we like to put all the rails up and get them somewhat close. So that way when it comes time to actually slide the bolts in, we're not sliding them in from 40 feet away. All we're doing is just sliding this out and pushing one to the side, sliding our bolts in for this rail, sliding our bolts that way, and then tucking it back together.
You couldn't do that if you had more than one L bracket, right? I mean,
No, these can go as far as cast the L bracket.
no, I mean
Swing the rail.
Oh, swinging it, yeah. Yeah, as far as only having one L foot, yeah, but as far as being on the roof, if this had 4 or 5 L feet on it, you could still get a little bit of room to maneuver, because all you're doing is offsetting them just a little bit. There's some bend and give to these.
Are you keeping these L brackets a little bit, not quite tightened down totally?
I just didn't tighten them down 100%, just
So I'm
right
going to
now.
use, because you're going to have to move it, you might have to move it if you want to put these bolts on, slide them on. And is there at some point when you've got everything on the rail that you want, that you tighten it down further?
You usually,
I mean, what's the torque on it? I mean, how tight you got it? usually have
just an impact driver is all we use. Normally, when we go ahead and tighten it down, and say your L foot's a little bit askew, and that's cranked in there pretty good, and you're not going to be able to move that.
Okay.
Believe it or not, when this is still loose, and you keep these 9/16" bolts, it's supposed to be loose. But when they are loose, and say your rail is all together, what we normally do is crank down on the L foot, basically 100%.
Okay.
If we do need to adjust it later, we can, but just by loosening it and then tightening it down again. But normally, if they are a little bit askew, and you put say if this was a full-length rail, and you have them all attaching to each other, right here, and this one, again, is a little bit askew, when you put the 9/16 on here with the ratchet, and just tighten down on it, it'll actually twist a little bit and tighten and straighten itself up to the rail. So that's not that critical. The most adjustments that you'll actually do is just, again, sliding everything left and right just to align your first side, the side you're going to start working from, and then also this 9/16 bolt as far as up and down on the rail to get rid of any of those bumps and valleys on the actual rail itself, or I mean on the roof itself. Does that make sense? Yes? Any other questions? So again, this is a 1/2 inch size lag, 5/16 diameter lag, and it's a 1/2 inch socket size. These bolts that slide in here and the actual rail that fasten to the L feet, they're 9/16, and then your clips and all these other bolts are 7/16. So really not too much. Not like you're switching around a lot of different equipment or a lot of different sizes. Makes it kind of convenient to do that. And then again, so we did bonding wire, and then your inverters, just the 7/16 bolt. You can take, with this style inverter, you can either take one of these Remember we talked about the weaves and the different styles last night? See these little holes in each corner, if you can see those are actually raised little sharp barbs on there that, again, when you tighten down, you pinch into the anodized aluminum. That makes your contact with both the rail below it and the panel above it. And in this case, it's going to be the rail below it and the inverter above it. So that just puts over there. And we would have 2 bolts here, but just for time reasons. Flat washer, friction washer, and then tighten down just a regular nut, and then 7/16 just crank down on it. You don't have to go crazy, but you'll hear a little ping. If it's quiet out, you can hear a little bit of a ping. If not, I mean, just as long as it's tight and snug. I'm sure they probably give you torque specifications on that, but I'm not quite sure what that would be. And the inverter cable, we just talked about that. Again, if you start here with your panel, you figure 39, 40 inches, and then right in the center is where you want to put your inverter, off center just a little bit. And then if that's the case, then you also know, once you get all your inverters on the rails, then you can come back through and put on your trunk cable. And fasten that usually to the upper part of the rail. That's where we like to fasten ours. Just zip tie it to the upper part of the rail, and then you click your inverter into it. And then that way, when you go to set your panel down, all you have to do is remember your 2 clips for your positive and negative off your panel. And this is what the back of the panel looks like. You can see the 2 wires, about 40, 45 pounds a piece. Not too bad, but we do not suggest you do this on a windy day, because as you're carrying the panel across your roof, and then the wind comes by, and then you become a kite. So not a good idea to do it on a windy day. That's fine. Next slide. Any questions so far?
Are there actual mounting places on the panels for?
There are mounting places on the underneath, but that's for a different application. If you're doing a big commercial system and you're down in the parking lot, you could actually mount a whole bunch of panels to a bunch of rails in these specific locations and then crane it all up in one. But in residential applications, it really doesn't, it's not that conducive to that. Yes?
If we have a metal roof and there's no plywood underneath it to screw to, but there's joists about every 8 feet. Would that be okay with these brackets?
You want to be, for argument's sake, you want to be 2 1/4 inches into actual solid wood. So however you've got to work that.
8 feet is enough?
8 feet spacing. You're going to want to be more like 4 foot spacing. Maybe 64 inches if you want to stretch it that far. Or we could look into a different type of rail for you. They make more heavy duty rail that's meant to go along the span. But I'm not sure if it goes 8 foot with anything.
I put these L feet in a steel roof without backing, and when you crank it down, it bends that 10. So I didn't have good success on that little application I was doing for a shed.
Wouldn't you be able to go to the shed?
If you can get underneath.
If you can get underneath. In this case, the shed was just erected to hold nothing but the solar system.
Yeah, if you have like a large metal, like a steel building or something, and you only have trusses every so often, if you can get underneath it, then yeah, definitely put some blocking in between each one. Double up on a 2x6 or something like that. That'll give you plenty. But definitely, like you have these older roofs that have a layer of shingles, a layer of shakes, and then they have the furring strips that go underneath the metal roof. You definitely want to have something firm underneath your L foot, because as you crank down, like Jack said, you're gonna, if there's no furring strip underneath your L foot, you're just gonna divot in that part of the roof. And then again, keep in mind if you're going through shingles and shakes or a couple layers of each, just keep in mind when it comes time to keep that in mind when it comes time to buy your lags, that you're not getting just 3-inch lags, you're getting 5-inch lags or something like that. Yes?
Now, the splice bar, you said that one side you do screw, but the other you don't, because you want to give it some expansion room or whatever.
Yes.
Does that compromise the wind shear?
Nope.
No?
That doesn't compromise that at all, because the actual little screws they give you really aren't. I mean, if you put all 4 of them in, chances are you might bust off one of the heads, like that's how flimsy they are. It's just mainly so you have 2 in here to keep this from moving.
Going sideways.
Yeah, from moving out, eventually working its way out and then losing that, that support. Yes.
When you say 2 bolts in there, do you mean 1 on each rail or 2 on
2 on 1 rail.
2 on 1?
Yeah.
You don't even connect the other side?
Correct. That's connected mechanically by your bonding gel.
Clipped in,
Yeah.
all right. And the rails themselves, do you leave a little expansion, half-inch or
Quarter
anything?
of an inch.
You do leave a little?
Yeah. A little bit of room, so that way, I mean, when you think about it, if you're doing it in the middle of summer and it's hot out, everything's gonna be pretty much expanded as much as it's gonna be. So you wanna, you know, quarter inch gives you a little bit more room for expansion, but you don't wanna go too crazy. And then when it contracts in the winter, not that it's gonna shrink 2 inches or something, but, yeah, you just wanna keep it as close as possible, but give yourself a little bit of room.
You don't think it's important to have 1 bolt in each rail?
No,
Definitely say just 2 on 1 rail.
2 on 1, yeah. So the panels. Again, we talked last night with the rails. You're going to have 2 rails per row of panels. So down here we already have this piece of flash footing in here, but this is your top rail, this is your bottom rail for 1 row of panels. If you want to do another row of panels, you're going to have another 2 rows or 2 rails. You want to come up here for a second, Bill? And just hold this up on the, just up on the rail. So just envision another rail going underneath this. When it comes time to start your When it comes time to actually start, we're starting from the right, working to the left. Here we go with an end clip. You can notice the difference here between end clips and mid clips. Mid clips go between each panel, and end clips are you're starting or ending a row. There's that little T-bolt set up with the clip. That way, if you don't have to slide in everything from the side. You don't have to try to think it through and space out every clip individually. All you got to do is push it in here and then twist it. And as you tighten it, the actual T-bolt will slide in the groove and actually keep itself from pulling out. But you put slide this clip over.
Probably 2, I don't know. But it's 2 separate surfaces for.
And tighten it down. And you crank down on that, and then again, if you have a lower one, a lower rail, you're going to crank down on that. And since we aligned this right side of all the panels, then we can measure off of each one and get an idea, okay, we should be pretty true. And then again, you want to measure from the top down and be about 12 to 15 inches where you start your panel, and then run them the length of the building. It's nice if you have, say, 3 rows of 10 panels. You're going to spend a lot of time on your upper row, because that's the row that really lines everything up. As you put in one panel or the second panel, you can take a look down, eye up the edge of the panels, and make sure you're going true. Make sure you're going true with the actual peak. Don't always rely on the shingle line, because if anybody's ever done roofs before or been on their roof and actually looked at it, it's not always straight. So something to be careful of. And don't also assume that you're measuring off the rail here 14 inches, that here is going to be 14 inches also, because sometimes your rails wobble a little bit too from your measurements. They're not always the best. That's why we advise using a chalk line to snap lines to get as straight of a line as possible. But then when it comes time to do the next panel, as you remember seeing in the video last night, that you have another one of these weaves. These are specific for the panels. You just put them right in the groove. And there's these little stoppers, these little tabs sticking up. I know it's kind of hard to see, but in a couple minutes we'll have everyone up here to take a look at it. You just lift it up a little bit, slide it right in there. That way the little metal barbs are underneath the panel itself. You slide the next panel over, right to that tab, and then you drop your mid clip in here, twist the bolt so it locks in, and then just crank down on it. Now again, these weaves are every one per center of each panel. So we weaved up here, and then the next one we'll weave the lower rail. And then the next time we do it, we'll have 2 mid clips, mid clip per rail, but we only need to use one of these weaves on either one of those. And again, the reason, who remembers the reason why we weave only one of them, or that we alternate the weaving? Who remembers that, huh? No? Okay. We weave this rail, and then the next rail we weave that one on the next, between panel 2 and 3, is because we want to maintain that connection in between each rail. So that way, this rail and the next rail are bonded to each other through the panels themselves. So if you think of another panel sitting here, and another and the weaves down here, if, say, electrical current hit this weave here, it would be bonded through the frame of this panel up and over and onto that rail and then on out to the system. So that way, again, in case of some sort of electrical wire that touches any type of metal, it's not sending current. This whole metal system on your roof doesn't become live, it just shorts out and blows a fuse somewhere. Does that make sense? Yes.
So that little weave, you call it a weave,
Yes.
you only use 2 per panel basically to connect. You don't use them like you have 2 brackets there. You don't use them on both brackets.
Correct. You only use, you don't use, say there's another panel here, and you have 4 clips on it, you only use 2. Yeah, you don't use one
One
every
there and then one down on the next rail.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And then once you get that first panel established, it's going to be the hardest one, and then your top row is going to be the most difficult one in terms of lining it up and making sure it looks nice aesthetically. Then you're just got to remember a weave. You clip your panel into your inverter, and then remember your clips. Weave, clip, clips, clip, clip, clips. Weave, clip, clips, and then your end clips, and that's it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Where does the next weave go then?
The next weave, we have a weave high,
Yeah.
so then you weave low.
On
the next panel.
far corner.
Yeah, far corner left side. And then the next panel we put up will be the end on the top right.
So it's actually only 1 weave per panel, because you're sharing the weave between 2 panels.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then it's the next rail weave,
Yep,
and then your next panel doesn't get one, or it does?
it does. Everywhere where you have 2 panels meet, you'll have a weave, whether it's the top or the bottom, that depends on where the last weave was.
What you want it up, correct. on each different
You
rail.
alternate them up and down, but in between each panel, you'll have at least 1. You can put more in,
Oh,
it doesn't hurt to be overly grounded, but, these, I think they're like $1.50 a piece or something. Somebody patented that idea, a little piece of stainless steel, and is retiring on it, or has already. Yes,
One of those little spacers or the things that, what are they called? Clips or something?
these mid-clip. This is a mid-clip, this is what fastens it to the roof.
No, the one that makes the connection to bottom.
Oh, this thing.
Yeah, what do you call it?
Weave,
Oh, weave?
weave, W-E-E-V.
Does that stand for something?
I have no idea. It
That's a
could.
good, crossword.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll stop somebody. There's another question back here? No?
I have one more. You said earlier that you need 2 bolts on that rail connector.
Yeah.
Now, when you have your copper wire bonded and tight, is there any problems with contraction with that, expansion and contraction?
No, because this is, has some room to like spread. If It expands and then contracts and stretches a little bit. It's braided, woven, yeah.
Oh, so that goes between the rails.
This
Oh.
can't wear your copper wire, but your copper wire is never completely taut when you put it on the roof, because there's always a little bit of bend, so that has to be given to you.
Completely what?
It's completely tight.
You don't crank them down.
No, you can crank down on it, but between one bolt to the next, where your wire makes the connection, that you can never ever get that 100% tight. So there is always room for expansion and contraction. Next slide. So your wiring. No, it's fine. It's up here. So your wiring, when you have all your panels done, everything's done, that all the big wow factor of your roof is almost accomplished, you still have to finish wiring. So if you have your trunk cable, and off the last panel you have this little tail that comes, one is, what do we do with the far end of this? You know, the end that we need to terminate. That'll come with a little connector that you just, a weatherproof connector you put on here, and it separates all the conductors, so don't have to worry about the termination side of it. But this side here that actually goes to your house, that's going to need, what we normally do, they make little junction boxes that mount on the end of the rail. They're kind of small, a little bit hard to deal with. You know, you got 4 conductors in here, and then you got another 4 conductors coming from, to go down to the basement with, so that it just gets all clustered in there. These are the weatherproof junction boxes we were talking about. They come in different sizes. You might say, well, I don't really want to see this on my roof after I've got a nice 20-panel system up there. It's going to look kind of crappy. Can you see the ones on your roof? There are junction boxes on your roof. What you could do is, and he's got a low-pitched roof that you can see relatively easily, you could put these above the rail. And as you're down on the ground, you fasten this to the roof. You can't see that really. When you're looking at everything, you can't really notice that. Even this one, even less. By code, if you want to also get real fancy, you could also put it underneath the panel itself, because this is still technically considered accessible because you could remove this panel to get to this. However, we are workers of the real world, and we hate when people conceal stuff like this if you ever have to get to it. So put it above the top rail, just let it stick out a little bit. No one's ever going to notice this junction box up there. You know, if you have somebody come up and look at that and start criticizing it because you did it yourself, then they don't deserve to be coming over your barbecue anyway, don't they? So, this trunk cable, you'll just get a weatherproof connector for it. You drill the side of the box, stuff it in there, take these 4 screws off, then you have your wire sticking out the inside. And then how do we get this to the basement? We talked last night, you could either run a piece of liquid-tight metal or liquid-tight conduit off the side of it, or have it follow the peak and go down. Not as aesthetically pleasing to run on the outside of the building. What we like to do, if we have the opportunity, is I did have this little piece of.
It's at the back of the table, the back end of the table, probably.
Oh yeah. Just a piece of 12-3 Romex, and we'll actually drill the back of the box with put a Romex connector in there, and then have this wire come, drill the roof itself, so that way the wires from the trunk cable come into this box and then go right through the roof. Go through the roof and they come out into your attic space. This, again, remember, the wiring is changed from DC to AC, so there's no code issues with running AC in your house. That's what's run there now. There's no code issues with running this in your house as Romex unless you run it through your garage, and there might be some issues. Yes?
Yeah, you said the cables and trunk cables got 4 conductors?
It's got 4 wires in it. 3 of them are technically considered conductors. You have your L1, your L2, your neutral, and then your ground is your equipment grounded conductor. And then your neutral is your equipment ground heating conductor, according to the code. Yes?
Could you run that wire with a conduit, not go through the roof, run that through a conduit and down?
Yeah, you could definitely do that on the outside. That's perfectly acceptable. Like I said, we do it both ways. It just depends on the application. Sometimes it's just better to run on the outside.
If you like aesthetics as an issue with a conduit, I've seen people take rain gutter piping and put that around the conduit just for make it look prettier.
Yeah.
And if you have liquid tight, flexible, non-metallic conduit is gray by nature. If you have a brown shingled roof, you could always just, after you put it on and strap it on, and you could silicone it, and then once the silicone dries, just come through with a can of brown spray paint and just hit it real quick, and no one's going to notice the difference. So that's an option too.
Well, I just, I'm having an aversion to drilling holes in the roof.
Yeah. Again, we don't worry about it because it's not our roof. So you might say, well, how do I weatherproof the roof? You know, if I have this weatherproof box, that's great. There's going to be, snow and stuff on this. There's no water can get into it, but if I start drilling holes into it, what am I going to do, especially on the bottom side of the roof? This is a form of butyl rubber. It's just called roof patch. I think Home Depot sells it. But before they sold it, I think we would get it at like the True Value in Hamlin. Usually, I don't even know if Durham has it. I asked them for it, and they didn't know what we were talking about. But just cut a couple strips of this. One side is super tacky, and you just layer the back of it. We go ahead and silicone it real good too. Mount it to the roof with the 4 holes, and then we actually come back through and silicone the edges of it too. Never had an issue with anything leaking yet. So, yes?
Speaking of roofs, I'm approaching the life cycle end of my roof. I need to replace the roof.
Do that first, yeah.
We talked about that last night.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep, 10 years is, I think yours was 14 years old when we did that one.
You mean the one that the first one?
The first one, yeah. Yeah, I think I remember saying it like 14 years. It was like,
It's expensive to come back and remove it to replace the roof and then put it back again.
Because again, your panels are 25, and here's a smaller junction box. I don't know if I showed you that. But what we like to do sometimes is, if you're running extra rail, say you have 3 rows, what we'll do is we'll buy, this comes in cut lengths. So if you have 12 panels, you'll have 12 outlets to it. If we have 3 rows of 12, what we'll do is we'll get this with, say, 2 or 3 extra connections on it. And instead of making a little junction here, and a little junction here, and a little junction here, for all 3 rows of panels, we'll just have extra wire and make weatherproof connectors for this, and then just run this up underneath the panels and make one big connection with the larger box up here. And then, or if we just have 1 row of panels, then we'll use the small one. But it just makes for less junk on your roof, and just one spot for connections. That way, if you're troubleshooting something, you're not opening up 3 different junction boxes. Does that make sense?
If you're using more than one of them wires, which you probably would be, do they plug together?
These,
Yeah.
the ends of them, no, they don't.
Splice.
Yeah,
And you can't put more than 14 or 15
15.
per trunk.
I think it's
Maximum
I think
of
it's
15
17
per trunk.
So if you take a chain, but now it's 15 max.
Right, because then you have to be on separate circuits for each additional.
You mean 15 inverters?
15 inverters,
And
maximum per trunk.
so that's one line going down in your house?
You can put junction
All together up
all
on
together, but you
know,
gotta watch your ampage on your maximum ampage on a single circuit breaker.
You said 15, you said, so 15.
But it depends on the actual, with the in-phase 210s or 215s, it's 15.
So
A different amplifier inverter might be a different amount.
So you need one wire of the 15 going down into the basement, and another one for the next 15?
Or wherever you put the
Yeah,
junction.
if say your roof fits 27 panels, you can do one with 15 on it, you can do one with 12 on it. If it fits 26 panels, you can do 2 of 13, any combination where you want to do 15 or less.
But two separate
Two
wires.
separate wires, yeah, so if it was just one, yeah.
We had it on yesterday's diagram. Okay, this string is one trunk line, and those 15 are another. They come down to a sub-junction, sub-panel.
So again, now,
You have to be on separate circuit breakers.
so we say say this is our junction box on the roof. We come out of the back of it with just our Romex. This is probably $90 at Home Depot for a 250-foot roll of it. Come down through your roof to your basement or your garage area, wherever you're mounting your. If it's just one set, you can just run that right into your electric panel. I'm sorry, into your meter first, then your electric panel. No, I'm sorry, I lied again. Into your meter, then to an outside disconnect, and then to your electric panel. But let's just say we have multiple runs here. Say we have 30 panels, 2 sets of 15. We're having 2 sets of these wires come down from our junction box into a sub panel. And here you can see the sub panel here. Again, this is something you can pick up at Home Depot, at From Electric, Eastern Penn, any one of these supply houses, and you just get a 100 amp sub panel, 60 amp sub panel, and each wires, each set of Romex coming from the roof is going to need a double 20 breaker. You know, if you're using Bryant panel or Homeline panel,
Double 20 amp?
double, yeah, 20 amp. So it's, when you say double 20, that means it takes up 2 spaces, and it's a 20 amp break, 20 amp rating. Again, these more technical questions, if you actually decide to go ahead with the system, we'll give you a hand if you want to talk to us, and we can explain it to you. Chances are, if you have a Cutler hammer panel or a BR panel in your house or a square D panel in your house, it makes sense for us that you actually get another square D panel for your sub panel. You know, if your existing service is one specific brand, why not just get that same specific brand for your other one? That way, in case of an emergency or something, you could always interchange breakers. Yes?
Could you skip the sub panel if you have space on your major panel?
You cannot unless you have just one run from your roof. If you have 15 panels or less, you can go right into, into your auxiliary production meter. So as you look at it from your roof, you'll have your junction box, your Romex coming down and into a, let's say, a sub panel if we're doing that. You'll have your sub panel. From your sub panel, you'll have an auxiliary production meter. We can provide you with a refurbished meter. That'll be part of the kit, but the actual meter base itself, again, $20, $40 at Home Depot, something like that. From here, by code, you have to go to an outside disconnect. $7, $8, weatherproof, non-fused pull-out disconnect. It can be fused if you want, but this is just a simple disconnect that is rated for up to 60 amps. You just pull it out, flip it around and turn it off, flip it back around and turn it back on. From your meter base, then you're going to a disconnect outside. This is so, again, if the power goes out, this is one of those stupid codes that you don't really realize or you don't really think they need, because, again, if your inverter has that UL54EE-EEXYZ certification, it should be able to turn off. If the power goes out and it doesn't sense any power coming from the utility, your inverter should shut off.
Well, the main reason for it, though, is firefighters.
Right, firemen don't.
They want to be able to turn off your generator, in this case the solar system, before they do any sawing or breaking into the house.
Which is, again, a bunch of crap anyway, because when it comes to the firemen, what are they going to do? They're just going to smash the meter and climb on the roof anyway. That's the first thing they do, is to cut power to the entire building, so then therefore it cuts off your electric.
There are issues.
But again, I mean, it's just one of those things like, oh, we got to run the disconnect too. So anyway, your disconnect, and then this disconnect should be located outside next to your meter, your regular utility meter. If you can't, at least just note that on your site plan and your wiring diagram that this is located. You know, if you say you're trenching underground 200 feet to a barn that you're mounting your system on, and you can't for some reason get your disconnect by the utility meter, or you have an underground service, your utility meter is on a pedestal a couple hundred feet away, you could just say this is on the building and note that on your schematics.
If the power company is working on, say, power reports to the building, and you're feeding the meters running backwards, right? They cut the power to the house, they're just generating electric power.
You covered that yesterday too.
All right, well.
No problem, sir. These inverters are by code, turn off when they lose synchronization from the utility grid.
Let's say I wanted to go in the middle of the woods and use a circular saw, and I wanted to rig up one of these.
You can't.
You can't do it, period.
You'd have to have an off-grid system, like an off-grid kit with the battery and cart that all the way out there.
So that's like a storage battery. then?
Storage battery, yeah, deep cycle marine batteries, what it's basically coming down to.
So I can understand the power of one of these grids, one of these panels. How many of those panels, if I put it right in the sunlight, would it take to run a circular saw, let's say?
If it's 1,000 watts, you need 4 panels.
These are 260-watt panels, or
255, I think.
255.
255.
but that's in direct sunlight at the right angle, or under what's called standard test conditions, which is 1,000 watts per meter squared of sunlight.
So one of those panels wouldn't do it, you need four.
But Dan, I think to answer your question from before is if you just had one string, one wire coming from the roof, how would you tie that in? You would still go to your meter, your disconnect, and then you would skip the sub panel. You wouldn't have to do the sub panel because all you have is one set. And the reason that is when you tie it into your existing electrical service, you have to tie it into the bottom right or bottom left. Because they want, according to the code, you have, say, if it's a 200 amp house, you have 200 amps feeding it from the top. They don't want another, if you have 40 amps coming in, to feed it right there and overload the bus bar with electricity. They want you to feed electricity from both sides. So it's got to be on the bottom left or right. And if you have just one string, that's fine. But if you have 2 or 3 strings coming from the roof, then all of a sudden it's not just the bottom corner, it's the bottom right and left, and then one above it. So they just want one point of interconnection with your house. Yeah.
I'm learning to understand the installation that's already been done. Now I'm learning what it's all about.
Yeah.
This is a useful session for education.
Right.
Even people who already have systems learn new things, so that's great.
Now, this is just a side note, if for some reason you're doing a system larger than 3 or 34 panels, you're probably gonna need to do a little bit different interconnection with the utility company. And what that is if your maximum output of all your inverters is more than 40 amps, then you're going to need to do a line side tap. Really not that involved. Actually, I think we prefer doing those a little bit easier. You don't have to fight for space on the actual bus bar. And that's, if your system is that big. We can explain that later. I'm not going to sit here and describe that to everybody, but basically if you're more than about 33 inverters, you need to do that. 33 panels, 33 inverters. So, does anyone have, how many people actually did their sketches? We got 4, 5, all right. Real go-getters in this crowd. Does anyone looking at their roof space, do they have any issues that they need clarified? Any concerns they have clarified? Yes?
This only south roof is about 30 feet long, and this can up into it. There's 12 feet here.
Okay, 12 feet of space.
Yeah, 12 feet of space here.
Okay. Her issue is she's got a roof that spans 30 feet, and then she has a gable end or a dormer that comes up into it. And in the center of that 30 feet, she only has about 12 feet up and down to work with. 12 feet is 144 inches, so if you do 2 panels high, that still gives you enough space. Because 2 panels at 65 and 65 is 130 inches, that still gives you 14 inches to work with.
You'd have 2 rows, 2 arrays.
2 rows, yeah, you could have 2 rows, and 2 times 30 feet is 9 panels. 18 panels is what you could fit. And then if you wanted to actually put a couple more down the sides,
Yes, right.
you could probably fit as much as 24, which would be roughly a 6 kilowatt system. So yeah,
It would roughly be what?
roughly about 6 kilowatts, 6,000 watts on your roof. So if you add up all your panels, that would be about 6,000
I
watts.
don't know what that would say or what it would mean then.
That would be 6 kilowatts would be probably 80, 70 to 80.
I would do 70.
70, yeah, same number, 70.
$70 a month?
No, 70, 7 megawatt hours per year.
Oh, I was doing dollars.
We were doing dollars, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 70 to 80 bucks a month in savings.
Yeah.
What would this have?
70 to 80 bucks, dollars a month.
$80 a month. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that
And it's
is
gonna-
a lot.
Yeah.
It's a ballpark.
Oh, did you go over last month, like volt times amps equals watts?
No,
Well,
you don't want to do that.
well,
But,
but it's easy enough to figure out. If you have a refrigerator, right, you're using 120 volts, say for argument's sake, it's 6 amps. 120 times 6 equals your wattage.
but, that's, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, you're mathematically right.
Yes.
But it gets a lot more complicated when you're doing AC to
Well,
DC conversions.
Understanding initial draw power and stuff like that, I understand. But if you want to do a rough estimate in your house of all your appliances that you have, we all know it's 120 volts. The appliance is always stamped with how many amps you have on it.
Although that's the maximum.
That's the maximum draw, but it gives you a rough estimate.
But then, I mean, you just go to your electric bill too.
The easy part, the easy thing to do is just go to your electric bill, look at your annual use.
Understood, but if I had a TV set now where I didn't have one,
The nice thing about grid-connected systems is you don't have to worry about amperage,
okay.
because this grid will always carry that forward. So you can really just worry about watts, and that way we keep out of this more complicated math.
You look at your kilowatt hour that you use in a month, and you can see what your system is generating in kilowatt hours. And you could probably tell somebody that with your
And
site.
the handout we gave yesterday
Right.
talks you through the process of how to go to an online tool
Right.
to look at your site and how you can configure it to get the conversion from the size of panels, the number of them, into watt hours a year. That keeps it a little easier.
Could we also just mention the wattage meter? If you want to find out if something specific in your house, how much it's drawing, whether it's really being an energy monster, you can plug the kilowatt meter in there and it will read out and tell you.
If you're in Wayne County, most of the libraries have a kilowatt meter available from seeds that was donated to the libraries for checking out. And you can take it home and check it out and return it to the library.
Are they available retail?
They're available retail, they're only about $25 from Amazon, or, I saw one in Home Depot the other day.
Okay, I want to get everyone up and.
Yeah.